All right, live again for part three of what? What are we doing? Part three of Joint Fundamentals, Lesson One: Principles and Concepts of Jointness. I'm going to give it my best effort. First video was 13 minutes, 14 minutes. The next video was 20 minutes. I'm going to try to finish the remainder of the lesson in 20 minutes. 8 pages in 20 minutes. Tall order. We'll see. The joint functions, movement, and maneuver. The concept of positional advantage is as old as warfare. Perhaps born the first time a combatant realized being uphill from or unseen by his opponent gave him an edge. Ever since, forces have sought positional advantage at every level of war, or ever since, forces have sought positional advantage at every level of war, from tactical in battles to strategic in theater-wide or whole of government contests. Such advantage is crucial enough to devote an entire category of thought to it in the joint lexicon, the binary function of movement and maneuver. The function is defined as in JP 3-0 as the disposition of joint forces to conduct operations by securing positional advantages before or during combat operations and by exploiting tactical success to achieve operational and strategic objectives. The function includes moving or deploying forces into an operational area and maneuvering them to operational depths for offensive and defensive purposes. Although a single function, the two terms are somewhat distinct. At any level of war, commanders maneuver forces to achieve positional advantage over an enemy. What maneuver looks like in practice is usually a combination of movement and fires, orchestrated with C2, supported by intelligence, and underpinned by sufficient sustainment. For classic examples of operational maneuver, picture Patton's Third Army's race eastward into Germany in 1944, or V Corps' drive north to Baghdad in 2003. As the JFC maneuvers forces, key questions might be: how can I put the enemy's center of gravity at greatest risk? What are the decisive points at which I can mass fires? How can I achieve surprise or advantageous psychological effects? Movement is tightly related to maneuver. It is, in a sense, how to get forces from wherever they are to where they can maneuver. Movement includes mobilization and deployment and may continue through cross theater transport, debarkation, reception, staging, outward movement, and integration with frontline forces. Movement often requires massive support from various means of transport, such as rail, ship, or aircraft. Since these are limited means, a JFC must prioritize: which forces do I need most and where? Which resources and capabilities can I live without, while still minimizing risk to mission or forces? Preposition equipment and stocks all enter the calculus of movement for a JFC. U.S. Transcom, the unified command that manages the defense transportation system, must orchestrate worldwide demand across multiple combatant commands, weighing it against limited transportation capability, especially air. Well, my wife don't come here and get me because it's 12:30. I probably should be asleep, but goals. Required reading materials are what? JP 3-0. Read pages 3-37 to 3-39. The joint functions: protection. Protecting military forces or even non military sources of power is one of the primary responsibilities of any commander. The joint function of protection addresses this complex and challenging effort. Protection applies wherever forces or resources are, from contested, highly contested areas of responsibility, AORs, to very benign or permissive areas. Different degrees of threat will include or will induce the JFC to allocate varying levels of protective resources and require varying levels of cooperation from all service components. Protection can take many forms, from solid and operational security, or OPSEC, practices to round the clock airborne defensive counter air sorties and active missile defense assets in high threat areas. JP3-0 states that the joint function protection preserves the joint force's fighting potential in four primary ways. One way uses active defense measures that protect the joint force, its information, its bases, necessary infrastructure, and loads from an enemy attack, or LOCs. Another way uses passive defense measures that make friendly forces, systems, and facilities difficult to locate, strike, and destroy by reducing the probability of and minimizing the effects of damage caused by hostile action without the intention of taking the initiative. The application of technology and procedures to reduce the risk of friendly fire incidents is equally important. Finally, emergency management and response reduce the loss of personnel and capabilities due to isolated events, accidents, health threats, and natural disasters. What protection looks like varies greatly. It may encompass missile defense, forces assigned to safeguard civilians, physical security details for key facilities, counter IED measures, information assurance, securing lines of communication, anti terrorism, emergency response programs, personnel recovery, defensive counterspace, or combat air patrol. These and a host of other activities all must be orchestrated under the function of protection. And this is a commander's responsibility. It is commander's responsibility to protect protection. You have an F-15 and KC-135. Picture there's a refuel going on in place, and this is an example of defensive counter air. Patriot missile battery in Europe, and this is their missile defense. And a Libyan warplane is shot down over the outskirts of Benghazi in eastern Libya Saturday, March 19th, 2011. So the thing is, if you look in this war, it is this Russian Ukraine war, it is not an air war. I don't believe air dominance has been established by Russia. It's almost like a stalemate, and they're not really not effectively using the air power on either side. So this is like almost like an outdated way to do war. And I guess when your numbers are so superior to your adversary, you can fight like that. But it is a meat grinder. Required materials. Shop. Summary of Richard E. Berkebile. Thoughts on force protection in Joint Force Quarterly. Shop. Is that? Oh, that's a faculty paper. That's Reagan Shop. Hey. All right. And to learn more, JP 3-0, 339 to 347. Ultimately, to learn more is optional. The requirement readings or materials are required, as the name states. The joint functions, sustainment. A modern fighting force usually requires incredible quantities of supplies and material to stay intact, even more so to fight, and still more to maintain combat or surge operations for extended periods. Sustaining military forces during the fight, during operations is a crucial yet staggering effort that requires careful planning and attention along with vast resources and means. Well orchestrated sustainment efforts can allow or have allowed nations to project military power across great distances and secure victory. By contrast, poorly planned sustainment and insufficient logistics have brought defeat to even superior forces. A classic example is Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812. So France was a superior force to Russia in the 19th century. I don't think that's the case right now. Since the United States has made power projection a familiar, even preferred tool of national policy, its military must place a premium on sustainment because U.S. forces will routinely be expected to conduct sustained operations across the globe and maintain the initiative while doing so. JP3-0 frames this function in terms of both logistics and personnel services. Logistics includes supply, maintenance, deployment, distribution, health services, Engineering, operational contract support. Just as important, personnel services includes efforts such as human resources, religious ministry support, very important, finance, you have to pay your soldiers, and legal. Soldiers do get in trouble, airmen do get in trouble, seamen do get in trouble. Pause. Clearly, sustainment is a major element of almost any operation. For both short and enduring operations, a JFC relies on accurate assessment from logistic planners and contingency plans. Due to their complexity, estimates, wait, most operational requirements estimates take significant time and produce detailed information. Quality of material, what preposition stock is available, what reachback capabilities are necessary, etc. Required materials, JP 3-0, read pages 3-47 to 3-52. Again, just read the entire JP 3-0. Student activity. Click through the activity below to improve your understanding of joint functions. Joint functions test your knowledge. In this activity, you will match a series of operational considerations or activities to the joint function to which they relate. You will have 2 attempts per page to get the answers correct. When ready, click next. Oh boy. How well have I been listening? Establishing a Humanitarian Assistance Coordination Center, HACC, it as part of a joint task force. This is an example of what? Fires, command and control, sustainment, protection, intelligence, movement and maneuver, or information. So humanitarian assistance, that's going to fall under the protection realm in my estimation. A Marine Ground Forces commander conducting a key leader engagement with local officials within his AOR to gain support for ongoing operations. So that, oh, that's tough because it's not really protection. Hmm. So gaining support. I really don't know. Not necessarily information. Doesn't feel like protection. I don't know. We'll come back to that one. I think, let me see. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. 7 different options. Let me see. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. All right. So we're selecting from a list. Requesting satellite imagery of suspected enemy mobilization areas. Is that intelligence? Designating fixed wing air assets to be in airborne orbits in case of close air support is required. Don't know. Designating fixed wing air assets to be in airborne orbits in case of close air support or in case close air support. All right, so C2 or movement, movement and maneuver. Forward basing strike aircraft so they are within operational reach of key enemy target sets. Assigning Patriot missile batteries to cover key forward operating bases is an example. I don't know. Requesting permission from a geographic combatant commander to utilize prepositioned storage materials in theater. Sustainment. Okay, so I have protection. I didn't know about the key leader engagement. an electronic warfare capable aircraft to a strike package in order to jam. And we, I don't know. I can't do this. My brain is not working at this point. So, yeah, that was horrible. I didn't get anything correct. But proceed with the lesson narrative. All right. We're going to need to read JP 3-0 clearly. The joint interorganizational and multinational environment. Let's see how much time we have here. 23. Okay. This section introduces other key stakeholders that bear upon joint operations. It is important for military planners and operators to comprehend the broad context of the joint interorganizational and multinational environment, as well as the various organizations that may operate therein. Having a clear understanding of key joint interorganizational and multinational stakeholders allows military planners and operators to shape and influence the operating environment in a way that promotes unity of effort and unifying action as much as feasible. Whole of government approach to operations. The links below will take you to some of the Joint Force Commanders interagency coordination partners. Open and bookmark the links for future reference. You have the Department of State, Department of Defense, Central Intelligence Agency, and the Department of Homeland Security. A Joint Force Commander's operating environment is not only physical, U.S. Air Force air power, U.S. Space Force space power, and even joint forces writ large never operate in a vacuum, but always within a wider context. When large scale publicly visible operations occur, the eyes of many, perhaps the world, are on them, and great opinion and influence are exerted as interested parties throw their weight behind events, one way or another. The Joint Force may be squarely in the epicenter of such events on the world stage. A JFC cannot ignore this context, but rather must account for it, respond to it, manage it, and achieve success with it. The DoD The DoD's usual operational context includes a broad range of stakeholders, government agencies, non government organizations, intergovernmental bodies, and international partners. This very dynamic requires a JFC to engage in continuous dialogue, coordination, messaging, collaboration, engagement, and or planning. For most complex adaptive problem sets, the U.S. normative approach is even broader than the whole of government. It is a wider than government, requiring careful coordination and integration across the joint interorganizational and multinational environment. Often, airspace and cyber operations tend to draw some of the highest levels of attention from key stakeholders. Thus, the responsibility to take the joint interorganizational and multinational context into account in plans and operations does not stop with the JFC, a Joint Air Force Component Commander JFAC, or Combined Force Space Component Commander CFC, CFCC. Associated staffs and planners at all levels must be mindful of this environment from preliminary planning all the way through execution because challenges and issues will inevitably rise from it that must be addressed. Again, required material. Summary of Joint Publication 3-08 in organizational cooperation. I-1 to I-14. Read pages 1 through 5. Woods, Sudden Justice, America's Secret Drone Wars. Interesting. Read pages 23 to 27. The U.S. Interagency in Space. The links below will take you to websites of organizations discussed below. Open and bookmark them for future reference. Missile Defense Agency, National Reconnaissance Office, NASA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. An interesting distinction arises when considering air power and space power through the lens of U.S. interagency stakeholders. It is, broadly speaking, non military service organizations do not have air power resources, but several do own or control space resources, particularly satellites and their payloads, ground stations, and system architectures. None of these are being integrated into the new U.S. Space Force, but the military services do regularly leverage interagency space resources for the conduct of joint operations, including warfighting. It is therefore important to understand the role several interagency space stakeholders play in the context of the U.S. space enterprise. This further underscores that space is indeed a vital U.S. national interest. The DoD's Missile Defense Agency develops and fields an integrated multi-layer system to protect the U.S., its forces worldwide, and the U.S. allies from attacks by ballistic missiles using the hit-to-kill interception technology at various phases of missile flight. Many will recall the 1980s era Star Wars concept, which furnished the organizational roots for the MDA. It is easy to see how international diplomacy and statecraft directly intertwine with the MDA mission. The MDA website lists 20 nations in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and Asia Pacific as partners. Obviously, interception requires sophisticated detection and tracking systems, and the MDA uses such networks based on Earth and science to cue its interceptor systems. An overview of MDA ballistic missile defense system is shown below. In it, you can probably identify various missile defense systems operated by the Army and Navy. Sensors, space tracking and surveillance systems, forward based radar, sea based X band radar, early warning radar, that's the one that had to build, Aegis Spy 1 radar. 1. Boost defense segment. 2. Mid course defense segment. 3. Terminal defense segment. Many will remember a time when the National Reconnaissance Office existence was not acknowledged, and the fact that the U.S. performed signals intelligence from space was classified. Most details of NRO capabilities and processes do remain highly classified, but a great deal of information has become available. Now headquartered in Chantilly, Virginia, the NRO was originally established in 1961 to reduce duplication of effort in collecting intelligence on the Soviet Union. Then and now, it leverages mature space capabilities, including overhead imagery and signals detection. The NRO's manning comes from both the military services and the intelligence community, and its budget does not come under the same detailed scrutiny as that of the DoD. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, headquartered in Washington, D.C., is a household name. The public face of the U.S. space program. It oversees 10 field centers, many of which are also familiar. For example, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JFK Space Center, George C. Marshall Space Flight Center. Most of NASA's vast array of program focuses on spaceflight, especially manned spaceflight, along with near-Earth object detection, exploration, and basing within the solar system, and many forms of space-related technology. A one-stop resource for links and fact sheets related to a myriad of NASA programs. It's at nasa.gov. Sorry, I'm getting a little tired. The National Oceanographic and Aeronautics Administration, headquartered in Silver Spring, Maryland. Hey, that's where I was before I went to the military. Falls under the U.S. Department of Commerce. NOAA's major focus is terrestrial weather, which it monitors partially by operating a variety of satellites such as Landsat, DMSP, Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, and the newer JPSS, Joint Polar Satellite System, and GOES 16, Geostationary Operational Environment Satellite. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, headquartered in Springfield, Virginia, is the USG lead for intelligence gathering. Intelligence, having a geographic focus, geo and geospatial intelligence, mapping, charting, satellite imagery, and digitized terrain, evaluating data detail are all the purview of the agency. If you have used 3D capability on Google Earth, you have seen an example of detail it can provide. While warfighters generally leverage NGA products, they are also of great value to decision makers, intelligence professionals, and first responders. Required video. The video below covers the NRO's history and general mission sets. As you watch the video, consider how it would be advantageous not to reveal details of NRO capabilities. How can it be advantageous to reveal some information? Why do you think the U.S. has opted to disclose certain information regarding the NRO? Required materials. Missile Defense Agency fact sheet. The Ballistic Missile Defense System. Read page 1 through 2. Spiritus, a separate space, creating a military service for space. Read pages 139 through 142. NASA fact sheet, Ames vertical gun range, 2010. Read pages 1 to 2. NOAA, satellite and weather service. Geospatial intelligence, basic doctrine publication, 1.0 National System for Geospatial Intelligence. Read chapters 2 and 3. What's all required readings? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a lot of reading associated with this one. Again, it's 15 pages. The links below will take you to the Afghanistan Resolute Support, now not a thing, Coalition homepage, and NATO homepage, and the United Nations homepage. Open and bookmark the links for future reference. In U.S. history throughout the last century, no one throughout the last century, one can point to many instances when the nations acted unilaterally to address a foreign policy challenge. However, that has changed dramatically in recent decades. Today, U.S. unilateral action would be the rare exception, and our policy has been to seek allies or partners and build coalitions to address complex, adaptive problem sets beyond the nation's borders. There is little indication that will change in the near future. As a result, the U.S. military must be prepared for involvement in multinational operations going forward, working more or less closely with international partners. Therefore, airmen and space professionals must understand the international environment and the political, cultural, and operational factors in play when participating in or leading a coalition of nations in military operations. There is no denying that coordination and collaboration with multinational partners can introduce difficulty and complexity into planning and employment. Sometimes this can be extreme. However, a multilateral approach often yields far more legitimacy to actions taken, especially when the use of force is involved. That benefit is often deemed worth the cost of multinational efforts. Required materials. Shop summary of joint publication 3-16 multinational operations. And it's a 9-minute audio. Lighty, fighting Ebola in interagency collaboration paradigm. Read pages 62 to 69. And there's one learn more. Targeting the gym way, more inclusive approach. Read 60 through 67. Joint all domain operations. The joint international, interorganizational, and multinational or operating environment in which U.S. forces plan and execute missions is growing increasingly complex and at a rapid pace. Forces are no longer able to focus on just the air, land, and sea domains, but also must contend with simultaneous challenges in cyber and space. These multi-domains, sometimes referred to as cross-domain operations, requires a fresh approach to agile and flexible employment of joint forces. This section introduces the complexities of all domain operations and some of the emerging thought shaping doctrinal approaches to this challenge. Required materials, Congressional Research Service, Defense Capabilities, Joint All-Domain Command and Control 2020, read pages 1 to 3. Hitchens, as per orders, SDA, to link C2 networks for all domain ops. Davenport, Multi-Domain Command and Control, the U.S. Air Force Perspective with Brigadier General Chance Saltzman. Hey, General Saltzman. Davidson, Transforming the Joint Force, a warfighting concept for great power competition. Read the entire speech. To learn more, Deptula, Army Never Outgun if Joint Can Help. Cunningham, Sustaining the New Norm of Jointness. Odom, Cross Domain Synergy, Advancing Jointness. And you won't believe this, but 36 minutes later, this is the conclusion. In conclusion, this lesson introduced you to the concept of joint operations. The joint functions is an environment in which the U.S. forces routinely operate. Almost every joint operation, from an overnight tactical raid to an extended theater-wide campaign, involves a wide array of complex details the joint force commander must consider, prioritize, and arrange to achieve success. The joint functions described in joint doctrine offer useful categories to do this. They provide a solid start point when considering or planning almost any joint endeavor. As you read about the capabilities offered by the various services in the next lesson, think about the categories used for planning and conceptualizing operations in the joint world. Air power and space power capabilities serve all joint functions, usually within a larger than service only context. For some problem sets, air power or space power particularly may offer the most efficient or effective means to carry out a particular joint function. Other problems will call for an all-domain approach involving other service forces or resources to optimize the joint functions and potentially complex operations. The next lesson will introduce the services and their respective operating concepts, capabilities, and limitations. Additionally, the lesson will examine how each service presents forces to the Joint Force Commander and how organizational structures enable the commander to effectively command and control a joint force. That feels like I just did an entire course. That's long. There's only 3 lessons, but look at that. I didn't segue a lot, but the assignment in there did lengthen the assignment quite a bit, and so um, go back over your information. Make sure you read JP 3-0. It has all of the answers that you will need. Ultimately, you could just read JP 3-0 and skip through all of the course. But I guarantee if you have a good knowledge set and a knowledge base of the JP 3-0, you'll pass all of the progress checks. I'm getting ready to go do my progress check. We'll see how it goes. Actually, I'm probably not going to do progress check. Probably going to go sleep because it's 1 a.m. in the morning. I'm out.